Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we're joined by Elizabeth Veliz, Vice President of HR and OD at Virginia Premier. Elizabeth, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am super happy to be here.
Loving it. Love to have you here, and I'm already loving your energy before we've even jumped in as well. So I had to make sure we clicked record as soon as possible.
Okay.
Elizabeth, fill in the gaps. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
As you were telling me your story, and I was thinking, wow, my story is really different. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't say, oh, I want to be this or I want to be that. I just kind of wanted to survive and get out. I grew up in the projects, daughter to Cuban immigrants. My parents arrived in this country around 1971, and I was born in 73. And we grew up pretty poor in the projects. My dad was a janitor for the Housing and Urban Development in Union City, New Jersey. My mom was a cleaning lady for the Union City Board of Education. So went through school, typical stuff, right? The poor kid, and just wanted to get good grades while all my friends were out hanging out. I would come home and do my homework. I was never the smartest kid in the class, but I worked really hard. So graduated high school number 7 in my class. And I thought that was pretty awesome until I got to college. Yeah, no, it wasn't. No. It wasn't impressive at all, actually. Because when I went to Rutgers University. When I got to Rutgers, I realized, wow, I am dumb as a rock. Like,
your classmates weren't living up to the standard, basically.
Oh my God. I had no idea what I was doing. And then to make matters worse, I partied and I lost my scholarship. Came home, tail tucked between my legs. I'll be honest with you, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because I came back. I have the kind of parents that are like, yeah, you're not going to go to school. You're going to get a job and you're going to pay rent.
Pay your way. That's you've got to pay your way, right?
Absolutely. And so that's what I did. I ended up getting this gig as a receptionist for Port Imperial Ferry Corporation. And that's where I actually started learning about business. I learned about marketing there. I learned about customer relations there. I learned, believe it or not, accounting there. Eventually, I became an office manager for the marina portion of this very wealthy man's business. And started thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? I need to go back to school. And so my cousin was a big time engineer at Xerox. And she was like, hey, you know, we have offices in New Jersey. Let me get you an interview. So when you were telling me your story about how you got into sales, I don't know if you saw the eyebrow go up, but it went up. And I was like, oh my God, he's going to die when I tell him what I did first. I go to this interview and they offer me this job, and I'm literally looking at the offer letter and I'm like, wait a minute, you guys want me to sell?
You know, everyone back then, there was like a stigma attached to being a salesperson, right? So like, sales? Maybe sales? Yeah.
A, and B, I was like, I don't know how to sell people, and you want me to sell copiers? Like, okay, sure. So Xerox has a world-class training program, and they literally took this kid from the streets, right? And they turned me into a salesperson, and I sucked at it. I was terrible at selling.
I think everyone is, though, when you start. This. By the way, we share that in common. I think the first 6 to 8 months, I was average, to say the least.
I'll be honest with you, I hated it.
Really?
Because I was making all these promises up front that the back office rarely was able to deliver on, you know?
Sure.
And so I did that for a couple of years. And what I got really good at was mentoring the new people that came in. And so if you look at my resume, you know, Icon Legal Document Services snatched me up. And then I went to Minolta, and then I went to ADP. And so I end up working at ADP. And I get this 360-degree review done on me by my team. And my team was doing pretty well. They weren't sucking wind. I was pretty good at leading other people. And I was really good at developing other people. And back when I was at Icon, they centralized HR so that we didn't have HR on the site. So I had to learn HR basics and the law, how to conduct effective workplace investigations, all of the risk mitigation pieces of HR. Icon taught me that. Okay. And I enjoyed it. I was like, wow, this is really cool stuff, right? So when I ended up at ADP, I'm here. I was probably around your age, a little bit younger, maybe. And I was like, wow, I'm a pretty good boss. I'm pretty good at this, right? I get a 360. And it turns out I was the worst boss in the world.
It always seems to be the case when people think that they're doing really well and they get that review and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, okay.
Yeah. My employees hated me.
And no one came to tell you it to your face either, which is a big sign that, you know, the fact that you didn't know means that you didn't have that relationship close enough for someone to then come and talk to you.
Yeah. But not even my boss. So you want to talk about really bad leadership.
Even your boss.
Even my boss had never told me, yeah, you're kind of a jerk. Yeah, you're a jerk. But the people in the evaluation told me. The really great thing about the time that I spent at ADP was they invested in me. They gave me the evaluation. The consultant was there and was like, these are the things that I want you to do. These are the things that I want you to work on. These are the books that you should be reading. And I am kind of a nerd when it comes to reading. I love to read books. And so I started reading, things.
Some of the books they gave you?
They did the most obvious one. Why Can't We All Get Along? Dale Carnegie, How to Influence Friends, Win People and Influence Friends.
That's timeless classic. You can even now everyone should still read How to Win and Influence People. Great book.
A lot of the Covey stuff. Jim Collins books. Jack Welch, believe it or not, the GE Way was one of the first books that I read. And then I read all of his other ones as they came out, Straight from the Gut, well, I kind of it put me like on a path of self-discovery, right? I think that you spend your 20s trying to figure out who the heck you are, right? Like I had no idea who I was in my 20s. I was trying to please all these people and worked in these big Fortune 50 companies and like you, with the suit and itching all the time and but I was me. You could take the girl out of the projects. You can't take the projects out of the girl. I'm sorry.
By the way, we share that in common.
Oh, okay.
Quite a very, very the highest crime rate in the UK is basically the area that I lived in East London, and it was literally just my mum who brought up us 4 kids on our own. We never saw our dad at all, to be honest. So the main motivation at 17 years old to get the first job was because we never had any money. And as soon as I got my national insurance card through the post, which meant I could work legally, immediately I needed a job. So I can certainly relate to that part as well. And you also have that extra hunger, right? Built into you. You kind of have that grit because you've already been through a bad time.
And we haven't, and we weren't like, I didn't grow up in the projects in Harlem, right? There was crime, there was drugs, but the fact that my parents were making, kind of minimum wage and they didn't know any better. And I don't want to make excuses for my parents. I lost my father a year ago. He was an amazing man. My mom did the best that she could with what she knew, but they weren't smart about their money. They weren't. Whatever they made, they spent and then some. Right. So I'm growing up and I'm watching this. I'm watching all of these things happen around me. And I'm like, I want to be on the majorettes in high school. I could twirl the heck out of a baton, let me tell you. And
well, you can do the baton and I can just do the breakdancing.
There you go.
Be like a duo. That'd be perfect.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But they were like, well, we can't afford to buy you the uniform. We can't afford to buy you the baton. So I went out and I got myself a part-time job as soon as I could work of legal age. And kind of have been working ever since. So yes, it drives a hunger in me that I never want to be back in the projects. And when I got that first job at Port Imperial Ferry Corporation, I'm the one that got my family out of the projects. Because I was like, if I'm going to pay rent, I'm not paying rent in the projects. We're moving out. So I was like, we're done with this nonsense. So, but when I kind of started getting to my 30s, I kind of was like, am I happy? Like, am I happy? am I a good person? Am I? And I started asking myself all these questions. I was already on my first marriage because I've been married twice and divorced twice. And a lot of the answers back to myself was no, I'm not happy. No, I really don't know what I want to do. I know that I love developing other people. I know that I love teaching. And I was like, well, do I want to be a teacher? And I was like, no, because I'll smack some kid upside the head if he mouths off at me,
So
you know?
my mom's a teacher as well, and she's a very strict teacher.
Right? Like,
Yeah,
so,
well, she was for many years. Now she's fosters kids, but yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
Um, so I moved into the mindset of, okay, I need to do something drastic. So I left ADP without a job, right? We came to an agreement. I wasn't happy. They were like, we want to invest in you. But I was like, let's just part ways. Uh, I didn't have a job. And a couple of months later, I started studying for my SPHR. A couple months later, I get a call from this vice president of sales for a small pharmaceutical company, a small generic pharmaceutical company. And his name was Luis Velez, not Veliz, Velez, the Puerto Rican version of my last name. And he's like, hey, I saw your resume. I have this director of sales operations position. We were just bought by one of Europe's largest generic pharmaceutical companies. We really want to, have a strong foothold in the United States. With your sales background and your business background, we really think you could help us. And I'm like, I don't really want to do sales anymore. No, it's sales operations. So he convinces me. He's like, no, you need to come do this. I was like, okay. But I want to transition my career into HR because I really want to develop people. And in my mind, HR wasn't about risk mitigation. In my mind, HR was develop people, be the focal point for the development and growth of everybody else. So I do this gig. About 2 years later, things didn't work out. I no longer reported to Luis. I reported to the president of the company. They gave me HR responsibility because the lady who was doing it really kind of didn't know what she was doing.
So you had sales and HR.
Sales operations, HR. I was also responsible for inventory.
Interesting combination.
CRM. Well, it was a really small company. It was only
Yeah, of
about,
course, it makes sense. Why? Because it's a business. But that's like I can only imagine. As I was a sales director in the last company, managing HR and sales would have been quite a interesting.
Well, it was a very tight group of people, so there weren't really a lot of HR issues. It was mostly, hey, put the handbook together,
Sure.
put our policies together. And then when the company got sold, it was, we have to do a RIF. Can you do that? And I got a little bit of kind of like mergers and acquisitions experience out of that, due diligence. And then, to be quite honest with you, I had another vice president of manufacturing operations was extremely disrespectful to me in a meeting with the CEO, right? So 2 men and a female in a meeting, and the other VP like gets foul, like, you need to put her in her effing place. And I was like, oh, honey, no. And I literally,
Wow.
I was like, this is not happening, and so I left and I walked into the president's office after I cooled down and I said, you know what? I'm giving notice. And he was like, well, how much you notice? I said, you have 4 hours because I'm done. You sat there and you let this guy talk to me like that. And I'm worth more than that. I have a lot of self-respect. Like, I respect myself. I expect other people to respect me because I'm going to earn it. I don't mistreat people. I really grew from that ADP experience. And I became dangerously self-aware. And I always say dangerously because so self-aware that before I jump out and say something, I literally am silent and I reflect. So whatever comes out of my mouth, it's very intentional, good or bad. It's very intentional. That really bothers people. That freaks people out, that I am very transparent. I'm the person that sits in a meeting and says, I have a question about that. Why are we doing that? And if the response is dumb, I'm going to say, well, that's dumb. That's dumb. Why,
Yeah.
why are we doing that?
I used to end up being, not to get too distracted, I used to end up being that same person in the last company. And I was always the youngest person in the boardroom, the youngest manager in the business. And I would always ask those questions. And everyone would look at me like, you're calling out the CMO on their strategy, Chris? And I was
Yes.
I was notorious for that. And I'm like, there was one about our marketing strategy, and I was saying, I'm the guy that's on the phone with them every day to our customers. My team is it listens to our customers every day. This is what they're telling us, and here's the data to prove that. And the CMO's strategy was based around their opinion, as opposed to the data and the reality of it. And I would not back down, regardless. I honestly was willing to lose my job at that point because I felt so strongly about it. But many times you see people in the room and they won't tell that CEO or that senior leader what they need to hear out of fear of, losing their job.
Yeah, it's called self-preservation.
Yeah.
And sadly, I see self-preservation. I've seen it throughout my entire career. I see it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad because self-preservation is what limits people from reaching their maximum potential. So I left that pharmaceutical company 3 weeks later, thanks to my network, and I will credit my local SHRM chapter in Morris County, New Jersey. Thanks to my network and the volunteer work that I had done there, 3 weeks later, I landed my first legitimate titled, only responsible for HR job.
So how did that look like for you? Because for everyone listening who's traditionally studied HR, gone up the career ladder in HR, as advisor, manager, then you've kind of taken a very unconventional. What did the first 6 months look like for you in that new company?
Wow. It was
What's the first thing you did?
Assess, right? It's like, when you go to the doctor, when you went to the doctor, they didn't prescribe you stuff and then try to figure out what was wrong with you, right? They try to figure out what's wrong with you first and then make a diagnosis and then treat whatever is ailing you. That's the approach that I have always taken. And so I walk into this company and they're like, we have, 47% turnover in our manufacturing plant.
Whoa.
Oh yeah, no, it was really bad.
Whoa.
It was really bad. And, and so, the heavy Latino population. And so with me being fluent in English and Spanish, I could connect with the employees on the front lines. So I spent a lot of time on the floor talking to people, doing focus groups, reading exit surveys. I kind of did my own makeshift survey. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ask a lot of questions and annoy the heck out of a lot of people until I figure out what is the root cause of what's happening.
But that's 10 times more valuable. Like the leaders that I speak to, instead of just sending out a survey and get a response, the fact that you're walking the shop floor, having conversations with these one-on-one, making yourself heard, building these relationships, that's where the real value comes from my experience, and also from speaking to some of the most successful HR leaders in the world. They get out of their office and go and speak to these guys. You can do an email, you can do an assessment, you can do a survey, you can have all the meetings you want in the world with your leadership team. But unless you're willing to get out of your office and go and have those conversations, which does take a lot of time.
Yes.
And you may have to travel, like many of the leaders I speak to, travel all over the world to different off-sites, different manufacturing plants, and go in there, walk in there, and for them to see you and have that conversation. That's the only way you're going to find out the problem and also engage the employees at the same time. There's no magical tool that's going to, or survey that's going to fix this. So it's your fact that you said, I know it wasn't, you didn't know what you was doing, you just did that. That was actually the best thing you've ever done. So good on you.
And it's funny because throughout my career, everybody's like, you are so hard to get a hold of. You're never in your office. Right. I'm never in my office. I'm out on the floor, out in the offices, out in the cubicles, so we are a Virginia-based company, but we have like 14 locations all across Virginia. So I traveled to the other offices, and I've only been here since the end of November, so I still haven't hit all of the offices, but I'm always out and about talking to people or in meetings. So in this one company that I was in, I was just like, okay, well, this seems like the logical thing to do. Let me go talk to the people that are unhappy. Let me talk to the people that are happy. Let me talk to the people that are kind of, I don't really know how I feel about this joint, right? And then I gathered all of that data. I put it into a report. I had, the fancy graphs and everything, and I presented it to the plant general manager and the vice president of HR. And I said, these are the small wins that are going to mean so much to these employees. We started implementing them. Turnover started to plummet. It was a win for everybody.
What was the challenge? That company that had the 40% turnover, what was the underlying issue that you identified when speaking to them?
So I think a lot of it had to do with the lack of cultural competencies in the supervisory ranks. You had a population that was predominantly Hispanic, Latina, and culture, like not just company culture, but a person's culture, that's a part of them. And so I'll give you an example. One of the things that came out in some of my discussions was, these people treat us like dogs. And I was like, give me a little bit more. What behaviors are they exhibiting? Well, they whistle at us to get our attention.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
So a lot of people don't realize this, but in Central and South American cultures, you don't whistle at people to get their attention. That's how you call a dog. You whistle to call a dog. So it was small things like that. When we get yelled at, that's very disrespectful. Well, that is very disrespectful. In my culture, you don't raise your voice. Like my mom would smack me in the mouth if I raised my voice. So that's not what you do. Well, they never had any kind of cultural competency training. They never understood the idea of diversity and inclusion. So we had a 3-day offsite. I took every leader in the organization to some rinky-dink hotel, and I threw together this 3-day supervisor training. So we covered HR basics and the law, basic dealings with people, and then we covered cultural competencies. I wrote and designed the entire training because I had no budget. I made sure that I touched on every single thing that came out of my discussions, the focus groups, the exit interviews, the surveys. We finished the training, and a couple of weeks later, the feedback that I got from the frontline staff was, where is my supervisor and what have you done with him? Like, this is great.
What was the reaction for the supervisors though? Because I'm pretty sure that in many cases, they're not even aware they're doing this. And are they? Maybe this is how they were managed previously, it's how their boss managed them. And they don't, a lot of times, as you talk about diversity, inclusion and culture, people aren't aware that they're offending people. They aren't aware that perhaps isn't the best way to approach that. So I'm wondering, when you had that training, what was their feedback when they heard when you shared with them the feedback from the floor? I want to know what their feedback was.
This.
For everyone listening on the audio version, it was a shocked face.
Yeah, it was. Oh my God! Wait, whistling at them? Clearly we're not. It's just the plant floor is loud, and that's the only way. Okay, well, you're now going to have to go walk to that person and tap them on the shoulder, because you don't whistle at people. And we went through a whole bunch of activities. We went one where I would just throw up a phrase, and I would allow them to just say, what is the stereotype around this? What is the stereotype around that? And there was a lot of laughter involved, because it can be really funny, some of the stereotypes, right? But then I turned around and I said, now, were some of those stereotypes things that people think about you guys? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. And some of them are true and some of them aren't. But when you looked at their leadership team, there wasn't a single minority in the leadership ranks in that particular organization. So
why they weren't self-aware that they were offending people. And
exactly.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, they were really stand-up people about it, because once they became self-aware, right? I think self-awareness is really, really important.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I'm kind of really attracted towards the whole emotional intelligence concept is because I think that once you achieve self-awareness, the sky's the limit for you. But you have to be mature enough and open-minded enough to say,
And
yeah,
vulnerable enough.
and vulnerable enough to
Yeah.
say, okay, I'm not perfect, right? Chris, I have made so many mistakes in my life. And in my career. When I took the plunge and started my own consulting business, right? I had my son in 2012. I almost lost my life having my son. And then this little boy was sick all the time. And I was the head of HR for a $50 million nonprofit. And unfortunately, they hired a chief operating officer that was not very female friendly, right? Would walk around the office calling women chicks, you know?
Oh, God.
Yeah. And I was like, I do not cluck, nor do I have feathers. Okay. And so that didn't work out. We separated, we went our separate ways. And I said, you know what? I have to be there for my son. He's little, he's very sick. I was marriage number 2 to an active duty United States Marine, which meant I'm a single mom because he was never around. And so I was like, how can I find a place where I can make my own hours, do what I love, which is developing people, and be there for my child? So I started my own business, Adelante HR Consulting, which adelante means forward in Spanish. Okay. And my consulting business quadrupled in size in 14 months and just through word of mouth. And the one thing that really annoys me is when people say to me, you're so lucky.
No, you earned that.
No, luck
That's
has
another.
no.
My friends also say the same thing, and I'm like, do you work 7 days a week?
uh,
Do you understand the amount of no's that you have to go to get that to that yes? Or
I
like,
mean, right?
know,
It's crazy.
yeah.
But I kept getting, oh, you're so lucky, you're so lucky, you're so lucky. No, Elizabeth, how did you get to where you are? Results. I deliver results. And how do you get the president of the company to respect HR? I earn it. I deliver results. So in my consulting business, I delivered results to a lot of these very small businesses. I gave a lot of consulting away for free. And then I landed a really, really big account in Tampa, Florida. And I screwed it up. When I landed that account and I was doing strategic management consulting, how do you build a sustainable business plan? How do you create a strategy that's going to take you 10 years into the future with the shifts in the federal government contracting space? I helped her with an organizational redesign, restructure, the whole kit and caboodle. And then my entire world fell apart. I got a phone call from Japan, and my then husband said, I don't want to be a father. I don't want to be a husband anymore.
Wow.
And he walked out on us. And my son was 17 months old, 18 months old, had just been diagnosed with asthma. And I have no family here. And I really don't kind of have family that, like normal people do. That, oh yeah, my mom is down the street, or my cousins and my uncles and my aunts. It's kind of just me and the kid, right? And so I was desperate, and I made a colossal mistake. I went to the owner of that business and I said, let me buy your company. Let me be the chief operating officer. Let me show you what I can do with this business as your number 2. And eventually I'll buy the business from you because I'll earn it, right? Big mistake. You never do that in consulting. You never make it personal. I learned that the hard way. She canceled my contract. So now I've got this kid who's very sick, by the way. And I'm kind of going, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Well, after I had my pity party of 1, I kind of got up, dusted myself off, hired some guy to rewrite my resume and my LinkedIn profile. Yeah, I didn't write any of that stuff. I paid somebody to do that. And he interviewed me, and he was like, wow, you're like the strongest woman I've ever met. I was like, really? That's funny, because I feel like the weakest woman I've ever met. And I landed a position as the head of people and culture for a small startup. And I loved them because they're a public benefit corporation. And their mission is to make sure that military spouses gain employment, and we give them
Oh, great.
skills. Oh,
It
amazing
couldn't
company.
have been a better fit.
I know, right? And
How timely.
it's incredible. The stars and the moon aligned for me, and I helped them build the company. I was employee number like 14 or something. We built it up. I helped them with operations. I tried to help the CEO as best I could. And then like 9 months later, this other company calls me and is like, yeah, we're hiring for a vice president of HR position, and we've heard of you. I was like, I don't really know how to feel about that you've heard of me, but okay. And I went in for the interview and got the job. And I was like, oh my God. And it's like a $200 million company, 5,000 employees across the country. It was a business process outsourcing company, call centers. And it was probably one of the most challenging experiences I've ever had in my entire career.
Why do you say that? What was the challenge going in when you first
uh,
arrived? After you've done your diagnosing and they
yeah,
asked you your questions, what was the big challenge they had as a
the,
large
the CEO,
organization?
the
CEO.
CEO was the problem. And
It's probably one
everybody
of the
told,
hardest ones to solve.
oh, I couldn't solve it. Let's just be clear. Couldn't solve it. So I worked around it.
Mm.
And I didn't report to the CEO. I reported to general counsel, who, former Marine, amazing human being, one of the most decent people I've ever met in my entire career. And he gave me the air cover that I needed to be able to do the things that I did in that organization. And it was really about driving engagement and really about developing other people and building confidence in the HR group. I had like 44 people in HR scattered across the country. And it was really about listening to the folks and helping to understand, okay, we can't do anything about pay. The CEO is not going to budge on pay. What else can we do around pay?
What examples did you do? Because I think it's very tough to work in an organization where the CEO doesn't have a people first mentality, and many organizations still suffer from that.
Mm-hmm.
Most HR leaders, if I'm honest, would end up leaving just purely based on that. They probably wouldn't work there. I'm sure you didn't know that going in, or if you did, then I have a lot of respect for you, because going into an organization knowing that you have that type of CEO is very tough, as well. But what are some of the things you did then to work around it?
So I will tell you, I knew that the CEO was a challenge.
You knew that going in.
Yeah,
Why?
the
Why?
recruiter told me.
If the recruiter knew that, and obviously he's been told that from the leadership team internally, why, as a collective leadership team, was everyone not clearly afraid to confront that?
Self-preservation.
This is what we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
No one was willing to put their job on the line for what was in the best interest of the business and the employees.
Nope.
And I think I want to touch on that point for a second, because many of the most successful leaders that I speak to in the HR space are the ones, and they tell me, Chris, you have to be willing to put your job on the line and be willing to lose your job to say what's right for the organization and the employees. And many people just won't do that. And also they find that self-preservation that they were worried about ends up being them going in there and having that conversation with the CEO, in some, not in all cases, ends up being one of the defining moments of their career, and they earn that respect by being willing to do that as well. So it's an interesting, but I certainly had, CEOs in the past where I had things that I would love to say to them, but self-preservation stops you from going in there. And no, don't get me wrong, I'm saying going there with a solution as opposed to the problem, obviously, as well. But I think it's very important. So yeah, so what were some of the things you did to work around that?
I worked with the less senior leaders in the organization that had a lot more operational control over their sites. One of the guys that I had a lot of respect for was the vice president of operations. He knew, everybody knew, that the problem was the CEO. Everybody knows it. Okay?
That's such a weird, how can you work in an environment like that, knowing that?
And so, I think one of the things that we all said to each other was, there are 5,000 people in this company that depend on us.
What about the shareholders? Surely they should.
She delivered numbers. And unfortunately, the company is owned by a holding company
They're
They
just
just,
looking. They're looking at a spreadsheet. They're not
they're
really.
looking at a
They don't
spreadsheet.
see a cultural impact in their report.
Exactly. Exactly. And they are kept at an arm's distance from everybody else,
Just to be
right?
clear, what do you mean by the CEO was a problem? Like, what was it about he or she's approach that people just weren't happy with or agreeing with?
Her entire approach, the entire approach, the very, not everything was about the numbers. The decisions that were being made didn't put people first or second or third. It was what is going to drive operating margins. And look, I get it, right? No margin, no business. Just like in the nonprofit world that I'm in right now, no money, no mission. I get that. But I am not the type of person that is going to achieve results at any and all costs. I'm sorry. My integrity is not
Yeah.
for sale.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And so the decisions that she would make, we would sit in the boardroom and look around and be like, wow, she actually just said, who are you going to fire to make up for that loss? Okay.
I don't know. How long did you stay there?
2.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, 2.5 years.
Wow.
And I think that, and she and I didn't get along. We didn't. And that's fine, because I was not going to cower down. I'm sorry. I respect everybody who's still there. If you happen to listen or watch this podcast, I really do. I think they are some of the strongest individuals I've ever met in my entire life, because I would have probably hit somebody by now. But I come to work every day perfectly prepared to lose my job if it means doing the right thing for the right reasons.
What
right?
advice would you give to people then that have CEOs like that, or managers, because we've all had a manager,
Sure.
or a leader or a director. Oh, I say we've all. Unfortunately, I have had many, few actually. That it's revenue at all costs.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of times it's just the way they were managed before, and that's the way they think that businesses operate, as opposed to getting the maximum most out of your employees, which then increases revenue. What advice would you give to them looking back?
So I'm going to be brutal. Get out if you can, but if you can't, get what you can out of them. I learned so much in those 2.5 years. I'll be honest with you. I would do it all over again. I would, because I learned how to accomplish a ton with nothing. It drove creativity in me that I never thought I had. I became very solutions oriented. I'm a problem solver, and large in part because of my experience in this company for 2.5 years. I learned.
You had to be creative.
Yes.
You didn't have the budget, so you had to be creative around it. I
Yeah.
see people struggle. Sorry to interrupt you. On the opposite end, where they've been part of an organization where they've had huge budgets, right? And then they get a role at a smaller business. They don't have that, and they don't know what to do. And they fail very quickly because they don't have the ability to be creative and to do more with less, and to work around that. They don't have the workday, unfortunately, embedded, or a huge budget for incentives and the comms and bends, etc. So so what were some of the things that you did around that?
So we focused on a lot of the things that we could do, partnering with the operational leaders on the front lines to create really great work environments, and silly little things, right? Employee appreciation events, leaderboards, potlucks. People love to eat. Let's just call it what it is in this country. It's
What's
all
that?
about the
Is that
food.
where everyone brings in the food?
Yes, a potluck
I love
is
that.
where everybody brings in a dish.
Yeah, we used to do that with our team a lot.
A lot of team building type of activities. This vice president of operations, whenever there was a really bad weather event, operations still had to run, because one of our contracts is a big utility provider here. So utility call centers don't shut down when there's a blizzard. Doesn't happen. So we would have senior leaders come in and flip pancakes and make breakfast for people while they were there. So little things. We would find money in the operational budget to do things like gift cards and a lot of training for leaders. I would come out to different sites, and even though I wasn't allowed to do formal leadership training, whenever I would visit a facility, I would grab the leadership team for an hour and do leadership training with them and show them the statistics and show them the data that says highly engaged organizations outperform non-highly engaged by 22%. And I said, how many of you want to add 22% to your bottom line? Right? So I used a lot of data with that leadership team. I hate to say it, I had to find very creative ways to do this without the CEO's knowledge or without the CEO's permission. So again, I came to work every day perfectly prepared to get busted and lose my job, but I was doing the right thing. And we saw shifts in people. The other thing was the talent acquisition process. We went to California one year and we hired 834 people in 4 days.
What? That's a lot.
Yeah. And
Wow.
it was a lot about process improvement. It was about looking at the process, doing process mapping, understanding where are there breaks in the process, where can we improve the process. I know just enough about Six Sigma to be dangerous, right?
You haven't got your black belt yet, though, no?
No, God, I don't even wear belts, to be honest. But I know enough to be able to understand how to get to root cause and then how to put alternative solutions in place and all that great stuff. And so we did a lot of that in the talent acquisition space, and we started coming up with conversion rates. So whenever a client would say, I need you guys to hire 200 people, we knew based on a formula that we came up with that if we needed 200 people, 1,375 had to go through the pipeline to get to 200 in production by X date.
Sounds like you learned that from sales.
I know, right?
You gotta get that many customers in the pipeline to convert that many, right? So
and my sales background and my operational background, the advice that I can give to people is learn business. I can't stress this enough. If you don't know how your company makes money and you don't know the cost of doing business, you're going to be a risk mitigation department. You're never going to be a business partner. Nobody is ever going to have the confidence in you to come to you and ask you questions before they make a strategic planning decision. And I went through hell for 2.5 years in this company. And now I work for an organization where I not only have a seat at the table, I have a voice at the table. My CEO and my chief operating officer, they are incredible people. They care about the people in this organization. They care about their members. We're a nonprofit managed care organization. It is all about driving healthy living habits and providing quality care to our members and driving the employee experience. And I go into the CEO's office and I'm like, hey, I have an idea and I'd like to try this. And it's followed up not with, because that's best practice and because some of these other organizations are doing, no, because here, if we just tweak this practice and make it a better practice for us, here's how it's going to impact our financials. Here it's got how it's going to impact the member. Here is how it's going to reduce provider abrasion. Here it's got, so I tie it to the business. And she's like, do it. Well, this is how much it's going to cost. Do it. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
And then I deliver results.
Sure. And the next time you go in, it's a little bit easier to ask when you want to be delivering results, right?
And I ask questions, right? I sit in meetings and I'm like, hey, claims processing. I have a couple of questions about how that actually works. And everybody looks at me like, wow, like the HR lady is asking a question about claims processing. That's pretty cool, right? So I want to understand the business. My last one-on-one with my CEO, she actually has them, by the way. Key.
Oh, I just read what you just said. Yeah, they actually happen.
She actually has one-on-ones with me, and they're actually very valuable.
Not just once a year for your review.
No. As a matter of fact, we're moving to twice a month now because she wants to spend more time with me.
Definitely should be.
In my last one-on-one, my question to her was, what resources can I tap into to really gain a solid understanding of the managed care industry. And she looked at me and she was like, I'll send you an email with the things that you should be reading, like managed care executive.
She's probably reading the same things, right?
Yes, she is.
Exactly.
And so when you engage your CEO or your operational business partners and you show a genuine interest in the business, a genuine interest in what they do and what helps to make them successful, the doors that open for you are amazing. I've been here 9 months on August 27th. I stood up the Center for Leadership Excellence, a comprehensive, end-to-end, multi-tiered leadership development program. We've launched a comprehensive employee engagement survey, which, by the way, we got 87% participation.
Nice.
Yeah, right?
Now you just got to execute on the feedback, though. That's the hard part, right?
Actually, when you have a plan, that's actually the easy part.
It's true, actually. Yeah, you've got the feedback. So,
and I've got a plan that I've used elsewhere that I've been very successful in elsewhere. We've identified our top 3 strategic initiatives for HROD: culture, leadership development, and talent acquisition. We have a project plan for every single one of them that is being executed on. People have said to me, I can't believe you've only been here 9 months and you've done all of this stuff. How? Because you come in, you assess, you diagnose, you come up with solutions, you involve key stakeholders in those solutions, you socialize it with key people in the organization, you build an alliance, and then it's going to get approved. And we have great leaders. Our CEO, she's a nurse. She's all about compassion. She's an amazing.
She couldn't be in a better position being from a nurse to, that perspective of not just being at the top and understanding what's happening at the bottom. She's been there, done it, right? As well, which
exactly.
is very important. That leads us quite nicely onto a quick fire round.
Sure.
Where I'm going to ask you 5 questions and you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
Oh, ready.
What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR leader?
Self-confidence. I didn't think I could do it.
Yeah. And that is 99.9% of the responses. And even for the people that don't say it, it's secretly deep down the reason too. And it was also the same for me. Not becoming a senior HR leader, but becoming a leader, a manager, a leader of the team is that confidence and belief in yourself, right?
Yes.
And very important. What's the best piece of business advice you've received?
Best piece of business advice I've ever received is there is a solution to every single problem. And the best one is typically not the one that's staring you right between the eyes.
What's one book that you would recommend to our audience and why?
Best book ever. The Carrot Principle by Adrian Gostick and Chester Elton. And the reason is, above everything else, is it's A, an easy read, B, has executable actions in it that you could literally read the book and transform your company like this. It's a great read. I don't think I would be here today if I hadn't read The Carrot Principle and done all the things that Adrian and Chester say you should be doing as a leader in an organization in that book.
I haven't heard that recommended in a long time, but I know the book. But I haven't read it, actually. I feel ashamed to say that, but I know it very, very well. A lot of people have mentioned that to me. So I'm going to link that in the description for everyone. Could you share one internet resource that you use for your own learning, either in terms of your own learning or productivity that you use?
An oldie but a goodie. Don't underestimate what's in SHRM.org. I know a lot of senior leaders put that down. SHRM, they don't really. I got to be honest with you. SHRM is my go-to for a lot of things because I don't know everything. And anybody who says that they do is either delusional or they're lying.
Yeah, it comes up a lot as a resource, but as you can't underestimate the years of experience and the case studies that are in there. A lot of people are trying to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. And come and just change the name. But a lot of this already exists out there, guys. So definitely go and check that out as well. What's one thing about your business the current business that you're most excited about?
We are going from a government healthcare model where we offer services under Medicaid and Medicare. And we are jumping into the commercial market. We are going to be launching an exchange platform January 1st, 2019. And that is, I think, scaring the hell out of everybody else. But of course, because I've got some bolts loose in my head, I'm really excited about that. Really excited about it.
You got to be, as I said to everyone, if you're in HR, you got to love change. You got to love disruption. You got to love, it's part of it. It's like, it's literally part of the role. And for you, it means it's more projects, more challenges, more talent that needs to be acquired, etc. Everything that goes along with that, right? So,
Yes.
So does that mean you're going from you private, but basically you're going into the private sector? Is that what you?
We are.
Yeah,
We are going into the private commercial market sector. So it's very different model. Different, but not different.
Yeah, of course.
But super exciting. It means so many.
The potential for the business, right?
I know, it's insane. It's crazy, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And my team I have the best team in the world in HROD here. So we're going to
get your sales hat on as well at the same time, right? Help them put together their pitches.
Yes, absolutely.
Going out there, why not, right? It's part of it. And that's another thing where I think, and just from meeting you today and having this conversation with you, I think you're so successful is that you have your energy and enthusiasm that comes across when you speak. I can tell you also used to be in sales and I'm sure in a good way, in the best way possible. And also when it comes to engaging senior stakeholders, and there is a sell in it. You have to be able to sell this internally, and people have to buy into you as well. So I can see the combination of of that combined with your passion for people and developing them, right, is the perfect combination there. So it's fantastic. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Absolutely love your energy. And I'm really happy that we had this call today. And I'm excited to share this with everyone. Before we part ways, if there's one parting piece of guidance you can give to our listeners, what would that be? And also, what's the best way for our listeners to reach out to you if they want to get in contact?
Probably a surprise to a lot of people. I spend 80% of my time developing others. That's it. That's the secret sauce. Develop others. And by the way, don't forget about you. Don't wait on other people for your personal development. That's why it's called personal development. Own it. Take hold of it. Don't expect other people to develop you. You go out and you get that development. But also, HR, let's not forget there's the human part of it. It is about developing other people. The risk mitigation stuff, you know what? Outsource that crap. Outsource that garbage and focus on the development of people in your organization and outside of your organization. So that's the best advice that I can give anybody. And how to get a hold of me, elizabeth.veliz@vapremier.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I pretty much am there a lot. You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't have like a private profile or anything like that. And I typically am very good about reaching out to people, even total strangers. I know that sounds dangerous, but I kind of like.
That's how we got connected, right?
I know, and I love living on the edge. So.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you again, Elizabeth. Everyone listening, head over to hrdealers.com. There you'll find the show notes from the episode, everything we've been talking about, links to everything that we've been talking about. Elizabeth, thank you again for sharing your journey with our listeners, and we wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.